What's up, everybody? Episode 18 of The Morning After, a Football Friday edition. Very excited to be with you for this special midweek. I know usually we are with you Sunday night into Monday morning, but because of all the games taking place this weekend, we'll have 5 of them over the next 3 days, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. And then really it's the long, slow march into nothing with just then 3 games over the final 2 weeks of the NFL regular season. But we'll have previews for you today. I'll have bets for all 5 games, right? We've got 2 divisional games Saturday, 2 on Sunday in the NFL. And then on Monday night, the Natty, the CFP National Championship. I will have breakdowns, previews, analyses, and best bets for all 5 games. A absolutely loaded 72-hour stretch. Before we get started, I just decided that after the championship games next Saturday, I'm going to do my first 72-hour fast. I've never done a fast longer than 24 hours before, but I was thinking about how for the next 3 days, starting on Saturday, for the next 72 hours, basically it's going to be focused on football 3 straight days, and then I'll have 1 more week of prep, and then a couple more games next weekend, and then I'm going to do my first ever 72-hour fast. So again, the morning after can be a little bit different. It's not always sports. I know you're tuning in for the games and the picks, but very excited that I'm going to be doing a 72-hour fast. I really recommend intermittent. For anyone out there who is struggling with their weight, struggling with their diet, I really recommend trying fasting. It's really changed my life. It started out as just a short, let's try it kind of vibe, and now it's basically my lifestyle. I can't imagine a day without fasting at least 18 hours. So if you're interested in that, feel free to reach out. I'll happily share my experiences with intermittent fasting and what I'm doing to prepare for my 72-hour fast coming up in about a week. All right, let's start with the Natty. I'll go. Actually, no. Excuse me. We'll go in chronological order. We'll start with the Saturday NFL games. Let's start with Bills Broncos. This is the first game out of the chute on Saturday afternoon. So the first pick that I like in this game. So the vibe I get in this game, and I just recorded my podcast earlier today. I'm recording this on a Thursday night. I recorded the Bet US podcast with Steve Fezzik and Kevin O'Neill. So, these guys are, super sharp. They've got their finger on the pulse of what kind of the pros are betting. Not a lot of side action in this game. I did see some love for the total for the under. And I agree with that. I do think this is going to be a relatively nip and tuck game, right? If you recall last year, this was the playoff matchup in the wild card round. Denver went to Buffalo. They had an opening drive, scripted touchdown. I believe it was an explosive to Cortland Sutton. Bo Nix made a nice throw, and that was it. Denver didn't score the rest of the game. They lost 31-7. So I don't know how much I fully trust Sean Payton. And I don't fully trust McDermott either, frankly. I don't really think either of these coaches. And it's not that I don't trust Payton. It's just that I think there's a disconnect sometimes between him and Bo Nix. Like if you look at the first half numbers to the second half numbers, it's almost like he's got kid gloves on. And then based on how the first half script goes, they might open things up in the second half. But Buffalo is a team that feels like they're going to make it to the Super Bowl this year. They feel like this is their year based off of, I'm sure Josh Allen does, based off of the fact that the Ravens and the Chiefs are out and it's relatively wide open in this conference this year. Like Denver, for example, being a 1 seed and they're barely favored at home in the divisional round. Like that's how wide open the conference is this year. And I wouldn't even be shocked if Denver closes a 1-point dog in this game. It opened pick. It kind of been flopping around the 0 for the last few days. But we have seen, again, a little bit of under money. It opened 47. We're down to, I saw some 46s, even a 45.5. I would make a small play on the under. My favorite plays in this game. So most of my bets this week are all props. And there's a couple reasons for that. One, I didn't really see any sides that I liked. I'll give you one lean on a side that I like a little bit later in the episode. But for the most part, I really just didn't see a whole lot that I liked. Secondly, I just don't think there's a whole lot of value in the side market or the total market, frankly, at this time of year. I really think the best place to find value is in the prop markets, especially for players that aren't typically priced in at this time of year. More sports books are offering props. The more markets you offer, the harder it is to price them all accurately. And I just think that is your best bet for really making hay. Like, you're never going to get rich quick in the NFL. But if you want the best opportunity to really find a game script, and let's say you get the game script right for one of these games, I mean, you can build an entire prop portfolio based around that game script and be very successful. So that's kind of the vibe that I get. I'm going to go with the Josh Allen rushing props in this game. I went over 7.5 rushing attempts, over 36.5 rushing yards. And I really like that in this game. Obviously, it's an important game. We talk about the quarterback with his legs. You know, the more important the game is, the more willing he will be, you know, the more of a willing runner he will be. But the Bills also, the Broncos play one of the highest rates of man coverage in the NFL this year. Over 30% rate of man coverage, which is the second highest rate in the league. The Browns play around 43%, and they're by far the highest, but the Broncos are second. You know, they are right there amongst the top man players in the NFL. Well, Josh Allen has a 10% scramble rate against man coverage, and he's got a top 5 rushing EPA. And the reason why quarterbacks running in man coverage is something that I think is easier to do. Think about it schematically. When you're in zone coverage, eyes on quarterback, right? It's easier to put a spy in place. The zone windows are tight, and everyone's got their eyes on the quarterback. So if he takes off to run, everyone's got eyes on him. Whereas in man coverage, your eyes are to the back of the quarterback, right? Like, you're running down the field with your man. So your back is to the quarterback. And if everyone's back is to the quarterback and the quarterback decides to take off and run, it's going to be harder to stop him. So in general, if Josh Allen sees heavy man looks, my guess is he's going to activate his legs. I think you're getting a slight discount here because obviously Josh Allen's a little bit banged up. I don't think that matters as much in a playoff game. This is win or go home. So if there's yards available with Josh Allen and his legs, I think he's going to take them. So we'll go over 36.5 rushing yards, over 7.5 rushing attempts. I'm fine with paying the vig on over 7.5 rushing attempts. I laid 70 cents. I saw 8.5 at plus money. That's fine too. I think Josh Allen runs 10 times for 40 yards in this game. I think I'd lean to the yards a little bit more because in man coverage looks, there's a better chance that he breaks a big one. But I think both are good bets. I think, right, because with attempts, you get tush pushes, you get kneel downs at the end of half a game, you can get the design quarterback runs, and, of course, you can get scrambles off of broken passing plays. So I just think there's a lot of outs with that bet in the postseason, and I just don't think the books fully price in the quarterback rushing numbers. You're going to notice a trend in my bets in this weekend. I've got a lot of quarterback rushing yards on my list. Brandon Cooks, over 28.5 receiving yards. So for those who were on the Patreon, last week I gave this out at 19.5. Easy over, hit it in the first half. Everyone's hurt in the Bills receiving core. They might run a little more 13 personnel or 12 personnel this week, right, when they run 2 tight ends or 3 tight ends on the field. I could see that. But if they're in 11 personnel, which is a 3 wide receiver set, it's got to be Brandon Cooks on the field because Shavers is hurt. Gabe Davis is hurt. You've got Khalil Shakir and Keon Coleman. I don't think they fully trust Coleman. So I think Cooks, again, a veteran presence. He's going to be on the field. Last week, even with Shavers and Davis playing a decent amount of the game, Cooks was still on the field for 50% of snaps. I think you're going to see a similar vibe, especially if Buffalo's behind in the game and they need to pass. I think Cooks, to me, at 28.5, I feel like he's going to get at least 3 or 4 looks in this game. And really, one of them could go over 28.5 yards because he's a gifted, he's got a gifted ability to, create explosives. But I think, a couple of receptions should get us home here at over 28.5 receiving yards. That's all I have for the Buffalo game. Again, I lean Bills. I said this on prior podcasts. If you've been listening to the show for the last month or so, I think this is Buffalo's year, right? It kind of feels like the stars are aligning for them to make the Super Bowl. And I do think they go into Denver and get a win. I think the market's pretty telling. Buffalo's had some, they didn't even win the division. Buffalo's had some moments this year where they haven't looked great, but they're still getting a lot of respect in the market. They opened a slight favor to pick them in this game on the road against the number 1 seed in the AFC. So the market definitely respects Buffalo. And I think that's because they're a legit team. Even though they haven't looked it at times this year, I think Josh Allen at this stage with the comparing to who's competition left, I think they are an absolute legit team, and you need to take them seriously to be a Super Bowl contender. On the other side, it's going to be really interesting to see how Denver's offense plays this. Like I said, I don't fully trust Bo Nix. I think the Bo Nix rushing yards prop has to be on your card this week. All of the panelists on the BetUS show gave it out. Buffalo, again, one of those defenses that struggles to defend quarterback run. And like I said, when the games matter more, the quarterbacks activate their legs because it's not something the defense has to account for at all times during the regular season. Quarterbacks are not as aggressive in week 4 against the Saints with their legs because you're preached constantly throughout the course of the season, in camp, in preseason, in the regular season. You're wearing a red jersey. Nobody can hit you. Stay healthy, preserve your legs. And that coaching adds up. You know, these guys don't take as many chances in the regular season. So the sports books are forced to adjust those numbers down because Josh Allen and Bo Nix and these guys aren't rushing for 100 yards every game. But in the regular season, they can. And I've seen it from quarterbacks where they rush for 60, 70, 70, 80 yards in a playoff game because the matchup calls for it and the holes open up and they don't have any hesitation. So I think if you bet every quarterback rushing yard prop to the over, with the exception of maybe the Seahawks-Niners game, and maybe C.J. Stroud and Matthew Stafford, right? I think you would come out on top with all the guys that are known as runners, right? Guys who are mobile with their legs, Bo Nix and Josh Allen obviously being two of those quarterbacks. So those are the 4 bets I have in this game. Josh Allen over rushing attempts. I'm paying a big for that. Josh Allen over rush yards, 36.5. Brandon Cooks over 28.5 receiving yards. Bo Nix over 23.5 rushing yards. Should be a really good game. I think it's going to be a relatively low-scoring game, but I feel like it'll be a close game. I think if you there's a classic Steve Fezzik quote, just let the sports books decide who wants to be the 1.5-point favorite, tease the other side up. If it's Buffalo, if it's Denver, I think you could do no wrong teasing either of those sides through both key numbers this week, depending on where the market decides to make the game. So keep an eye on that price throughout the course of the next day or so. But feels like a toss-up game. Feels like a relatively low-scoring game. I think the prop market's the way to play it. All right, let's move on to the night game on Saturday. San Francisco, Seattle. Niners obviously off that impressive win over the Eagles as a 6-point road dog. Classic example of CLV trash can where the market steams up Philly all week. All week long, the Eagles were the right side, the quote-unquote right side. I'm doing the air quotes for anyone listening, on the audio version. And then they lose by 4, and they don't cover the spread by 10, essentially. They miss out on the closing number, being a 6-point favorite, miss out on the closing number by double digits. The game was kind of a Niners season in a nutshell. Suffered another major injury to George Kittle, who tore his Achilles, overcame a couple of bad Brock Purdy interceptions, still managed to actually put out a pretty decent EPA number. Their offense still was moving it a little bit, even though kind of ran into some roadblocks. Meanwhile, you do have this game being obviously a return matchup, right? The teams met twice during the regular season, bookend fashion. Week 1, Niners won by 4 as a 3.5-point road favorite. Week 18, just a couple weeks ago, it was Seattle as the road favorite, winning by 10, really dominating that Niners offense. So again, more props for me here. I'll give you my plays. I really like the Brock Purdy interception prop in this game. So this is the highest priced interception prop of the weekend for good reason. So the Seahawks play about 80% zone, mostly zone coverage, one of the higher rates of zone in the NFL. Purdy's actually had a pretty good success rate against zone coverage this year. However, 7 of his 10 interceptions have come against zone, and he's thrown 5 interceptions in his last 4 games. The interesting part of this game is the wrench that got thrown in the market on Friday with Sam Darnold's injury. I frankly don't know if he's going to play or not. I think the market still thinks he's playing because we haven't pushed under 7 yet. We've been sitting at 7 pretty much all week. It kind of pushed slightly out to 7.5, but then we did see some buyback on the Niners at 7.5. We're sitting now, again, between 7 and 7.5. I see one sharp shop circa here in town is at 7 minus 115. So again, it's kind of like 7.25, not quite 7.5, not quite 7. I think if Darnold plays, I think this probably closes 7.5. The public has their say in the playoffs, so it's really all a matter of what side the public wakes up on Saturday morning and decides to bet. I was looking at the MGM splits last night. There's actually some money for the Niners. Like, the Niners right now are getting about 70% of the bets at BetMGM. Now, does that mean that's going to continue all week? Maybe not. But I don't see there being a strong appetite for laying 7 points with Sam Darnold. Not after everything we've seen in the postseason so far, and not after the injury news that, again, he might play in the game, but how healthy is he? So I don't think there's going to be a strong appetite for Seattle here. So if you want to bet Seattle at 7, wait, because I think you're going to have plenty of chance to do so. If you're interested in betting the Niners at 7, you might want to get in before any more news breaks, because even if Darnold does play, he's still going to be limited, right? He's questionable heading into the game. So I just don't see it moving off 7 anymore. I think it's probably going to close 7 unless obviously Darnold sits and we go to Drew Lock, and then of course the market would probably move at least a few points. I don't know exactly how many, but at least 3, I would guess, because, say what you want about Darnold, I still think Lock is a pretty significant downgrade. So I would say bet Darnold under props to play it safe, right? Like, I bet the Darnold under passing attempts prop. First of all, game script-wise, Seattle should have a lead. They're running it really well. The Niners can't stop a cold, period, on defense, whether it's pass or run. So I just don't see them playing a lot of, giving up a lot of explosive plays. You've got to make Sam earn it. So I would say attempts under, and if you're Seattle, you don't want to put this game on Sam Darnold's arm. You want this game to be put on your defense and the two legs, the legs of Charbonnet and Kenneth Walker. So I think that's the way to play it from a game script standpoint. Darnold unders, Seattle running back overs. And then on the Niners side, we got to bet some Kyle Juszczyk. So Juszczyk's receptions prop 1.5, his receiving yards prop, I got over 13.5. The Niners play the highest rate of 21 personnel in the league at almost 40%. What is 21 personnel? 2-1, right? The number's 2-1. The first number is the number of tight ends on the field. The second number is the number of running backs. So 2 tight ends, 1 running back. So 40% of snaps, the Niners have 2 tight ends on the field. Well, George Kittle just got hurt. And Tonga's obviously going to play a big role in this game. I think he's a guy that you should obviously be looking towards as well. But I think Kyle Juszczyk is a weapon. And I think Kyle Shanahan trusts Kyle Juszczyk. He has been on this team throughout this entire run. And if he needs to play this H-back role where he is, kind of that second tight end that can go in motion and be, targeted off play action, I think Juszczyk's up for the challenge. So that's a guy that, again, when we're talking about betting props that are mispriced in the market, props that the market can't properly priced because they don't have a full season of data to go off of. Brandon Cooks, great example. Kyle Juszczyk, another great example, where if they do end up running a lot of 21 personnel still, and Juszczyk's that second tight end, he's going to get at least a couple of looks off play action, and I could see him having, 1 or 2 big plays in this game. It's only going to take 1 or 2, I think, to keep the Niners in this game. I think this is, again, going to be another under game. Kevin gave out the first half under in this game. I love that play, under 23. We also saw Fez give out the Darnold under passing yards prop and Walker Charbonnet over their rushing yard props. Again, that's the script in this game. Rushing overs for the Seahawks, for Darnold, passing unders. For the 49ers, I would look to passing overs, right? Brock Purdy throwing an interception. Kyle Juszczyk receiving more yards than expected, receptions more yards than expected. But overall, I think the scoring is going to be tight, right? Third time these teams are playing. These teams, the staffs know each other very well. That always leads to a close game. All right, let's flip the page to Sunday. Texans, Patriots. It looks like New England still paying it 3 across the board. Total 41. Not a ton of movement on either side or total. This is another game with a coaching staff very familiar with each other. Specifically, Nick Caley, offensive coordinator for the Texans, and Josh McDaniels, offensive coordinator for the Patriots. When McDaniels was when McDaniels was the head coach in New England, Caley was his assistant. He was one of the offensive assistants. Then he was the tight ends coach. and then he went on to become the passing game coordinator of the LA Rams. And then from there, he came to Houston. So this is a guy that, in McDaniels, that knows Nick Caley very well. That, again, is another situation where I always favor the teacher in the teacher-student dynamic, especially when the student is on the road with a warm weather dome team going outdoors in cold weather in January and with a bad offensive line and a quarterback that's susceptible to turning it over, just like we saw last week with the Texans. I mean, let's be honest. If Aaron Rodgers and that Steelers offense could do anything last week, C.J. Stroud was in trouble because they lost the turnover battle and he looked shaky. And then they kind of, stabilized things in the fourth quarter. But I think there might be a world where that Texans offense without Nico Collins is going to be held in check. So under 20.5, I got under 20.5 in the first half. I laid 35 cents for that over at BetMGM. I think that's a fantastic wager. The other bet I really like in this game is the Drake May rushing yards over. This has been a guy that's become a big factor with his legs over the last few weeks. He's rushed for over 100 yards in the last 2 games. He wasn't a big runner early in the year, and I understand why. Hey, first-year starter, figuring out how to be an NFL starting quarterback, second year in the league. Just don't worry about running. We know you can run. We know that's there. That's easy. Learn how to play quarterback. Learn how to make the reads. Learn how to run the protection. Learn how to figure out defenses. And then later on in the season, when the situation calls for it and you haven't been battered and broken by 17 weeks of running, well, now we can activate your legs a little bit. Makes a whole lot of sense to me. Market's not going to account for that. Market's only going to take into account what we've seen throughout the course of the regular season, which is Drake May hasn't been a big factor with his legs. That's changed over the last 2 weeks. Oh, by the way, May, 6th in scramble rate per EPA per dropback, 6th in scrambling EPA per dropback. So he hasn't done it a lot, but when he does do it, it's effective. It was really effective last week against the Chargers, and the Texans ranked 31st in scramble EPA per dropback this season. Houston's defense formidable, but if you can get around that pass rush, there's not a lot there. And that's where I think Drake May can be effective. So I got over 34.5 rushing yards for the Patriots quarterback. All right, let's go to the fourth and final game. Really excited for this one. It's going to be freezing cold in Chicago for Rams-Bears, sub-zero type temperatures with the wind chill. Obviously, Chicago off that insane win last week where they were down 21-3 at half. They had a 4% win probability before that 4th and 8 conversion from Caleb Williams to Rome Odunze. So Chicago's MO this year, bad in the first half, good in the second half. It played out exactly that way against Green Bay. 34% success rate in the first half, jumped to 50% in the second half. Colson Loveland was incredible. Fez gave out his over 4.5 receptions prop again this week. We have been that thing's been a cash cow over the last few weeks. Loveland's really come alive, and he is definitely the main weapon on this Bears offense. For the Rams, kind of a meh win against the Panthers. Defense didn't look great. Their secondary allowed 7 receptions of at least 15 yards. Stafford, though, was clutch under pressure. They were down late. They needed the score. They got the score. So never going to fault the team for winning in the NFL postseason, but they didn't even come close to covering the spread. And that's going to be something that will be really fascinating to see if they can, again, road favorite this week. It'll be interesting to see if they can figure out that number. I gave out 2 bets in this game. I really like one of them. The Blake Corum over rushing yards prop. I got over 45.5, and I also saw an over 41.5 at a rogue shop. I think it was MGM. I saw them on Thursday, right before I taped this. I saw 41.5. Either bet's fine. I think Corum is one of those guys that, again, the market not fully accounting for. I thought that we were going to see a split last week, right? Like, I was on the Kyren Williams overs last week. I thought Kyren Williams was going to become the guy. And, we've seen these guys split the carries throughout the course of the season. My understanding and the way that I kind of go about my business in the playoffs is when it's postseason time, it's time for the stars to get the work. So I thought Kyren Williams was going to get at least 80% of the carries. It was going to be 80-20 or maybe even 70-30. It was almost 50-50. Kyren Williams got 13 carries to Blake Corum's 11. And the snap share was about 65-35. So I kind of think Corum is part of the equation here. He's not just the RB2. Like, it's kind of a 1A, 1B. And the matchup really favors Corum this week. Why? Well, the Bears are really bad at defending the outside run. 27th in the league at defending outside the hash marks in the run game, outside the tight end. And that to me is one of those things that make you go, well, Kyren Williams is the bruiser back, right? He's the between the tackles guy, where Corum's got a significantly higher EPA on outside runs than inside runs. And Kyren Williams the opposite, right? Kyren Williams is the bruiser, the smash mouth guy between the tackles, and he's not as effective when he has to bounce. So this matchup favors Corum. I'm sure the Rams know that. And if they're comfortable giving Blake Corum 11 carries, including multiple carries in the fourth quarter of a close game, I don't see them being scared to give him any carries on the road here in this game, especially with the temperatures being what they are. We think this is going to be, at least the market thinks it's going to be a little bit of a lower scoring game because we've seen this number come down. It's still a relatively high total, but come down from 51, now down to 48.5. So we think there's going to be a little bit more ground and pound here. And I think Corum's got an edge on the outside. So I would bet Blake Corum. Probably my favorite prop of the week, Blake Corum, over 45.5 rushing yards. I'd say that's the best bet of the week for me in the prop market. I also bet the Caleb Williams interceptions prop, or interception prop, just one. He only needs to throw one. The Rams play about 80% zone coverage, one of the highest rates of zone in the NFL. Caleb Williams has really struggled against zone, 45% success rate. 6 of his 7 regular season interceptions this year have been against zone coverage. He threw 2 picks in the last game. I just think Caleb, to me, is a guy that, especially if they're down late, he will press. And they're designed to take risks. That offense is designed to take risks. So I think the interception prop, he has been one of the more fortunate quarterbacks in the NFL this year with 20 turnover-worthy plays, but just 9 picks. So he's thrown a lot of interception-worthy throws that just haven't been intercepted. I think Caleb's a guy that if you're getting him, I got minus 110 for this interception prop. I feel like that is very fair, more than fair. I think this should be even closer to minus 130 or minus 140 for him to throw an interception in the game, especially if the Bears are behind. So that's my NFL picks. I'll give them to you one more time. Again, no side. I didn't bet one side all week. I haven't done well with sides this year. I've done much better with props. Josh Allen, over 7.5 rush attempts. Josh Allen, over 36.5 rush yards. Brandon Cooks, over 28.5 receiving yards. Bo Nix, over 23.5 rushing yards. Brock Purdy, interception. Kyle Juszczyk, over 13.5 receiving yards. Kyle Juszczyk, over 1.5 receptions. Sam Darnold, under 29.5 passing attempts. Drake May, over 34.5 rushing yards. Texans, Patriots, under 20 in the first, under 20.5 in the first half. Try to find that hook. 20's fine too, though. Blake Corum, over 45.5 rushing yards. Caleb Williams to throw an interception. Whew. A lot of bets on the NFL card this week. It was honestly, wild card weekend was freaking nuts. And you know what? I'll curse. Fuck it. It was fucking nuts. It was absolutely nuts. How about this? Of the 6 games, right? If you won the turnover margin, you went 2-4. So teams that lost the turnover margin, wild card weekend, won 4 of the 6 games. The combined turnover margin of the winning teams was a -4. That's how wild of a weekend it was. I don't think it will be as wild this weekend. I do think we will eventually see the cream rise to the top. If you want my prediction for the championship Sunday participants, I think we're going to see 2 division rematches. I think we're going to see Buffalo and New England. I think we're going to see Seattle and the Rams. That's what I think. I'm wrong a lot. You want to do a 14 parlay with that? Have a blast. I'm not doing it because I'm probably going to get 1 or 2 of them wrong. I'm trying to think if there's anything else with either of these games that I have not given you that I want to give you information-wise. I think I feel good about these picks, guys. I think it's going to be a good weekend with props. I would be tailing all of these props. I would be watching the Bet US NFL show and, tailing all of our bets. I think we've had out of the last 10 weeks, I think we've only had 1 losing week. No, we've had 2 losing weeks since week 12. We've had 2 losing weeks since week 10. Again, of the last 9 weeks that we've done, right? Week 18, week 19, 1 week of the playoffs, we've only had 2 losing weeks out of the last 9 weeks. So if you're betting all the props, you're betting all the plays from the show, you're doing pretty well. And credit Kevin, he's been fantastic this year. I've been kind of 500. Fez's been kind of 500, but we've been better in the second half than the first half of the year. That is a trend for us. We've done that multiple years in a row where we just finish strong. It's also easier to handicap these games when there's only 4 of them. And I can really dive into the matchups. Like, I'm giving you a lot of, intense statistics that are really digging layers deep. I don't have time to do that for every game during the NFL regular season. So I have more time. I can focus on better matchups, and I think it leads to a better overall quality of bet. And I think it's going to be a really good week. All right, let's move on to college football. I'll give you my breakdown for the championship game. We're still sitting 8.5, Indiana and Miami. It looks like Indiana's going to close a touchdown plus favorite. How high, we'll see. So here's my first. I'll give you my overall betting strategy for the game, and then we'll dive into some matchups. I'll give you a couple props I like. I like a first quarter total as well. I really like one prop, the first quarter under, one prop, and then a side for the game. I think I'm going to bet the side because I have Indiana plus 130 from last round. Right, we gave that out 2 weeks ago. If you were listening to the show, that was the Morning Glory segment 2 weeks ago. It was Indiana plus 130 to win the college football playoff. Obviously, we're feeling great about that right now. They're an 8.5-point favorite in the championship game. Fantastic bet by us. Cheers to that. Now, what do we do with that bet? Because now we can earn off of it, and maybe we can middle. So I think that's where we get to now. The only question is, how high does this number go, right? Like, I think if you asked a lot of sharp bettors, they'll probably say at some point you're going to see some buyback on Miami, which is very fair. But this is a national championship, and you're also going to see the public have its say. Everyone's betting Indiana. I'm seeing 70, 80% splits at the major shops. So if that exposure keeps coming and keeps coming and keeps coming, and 8 out of 10 people at DraftKings and MGM and FanDuel and Fanatics and all these shops keep betting Indiana, maybe this thing balloons to 9 or 9.5. Does it get to 10? Whew. That's where you would definitely see significant Miami money step into the market. My point being, I'm not in a rush to bet Miami. I'm going to wait, and I'm going to see how far the public's going to take this. Because let's say it goes the other way, and someone hops in at 8.5 and says, I want Miami. Well, I don't really care if I bet 8.5 or 8. Doesn't really change the way I feel about the game. But if I bet 9 and then it goes to 10, well, then I'm going to feel like a Dumbo. So I'm willing to wait, right? That's asymmetric risk. That 10 is important. The 7 is important. If I bet 7.5, if I bet Miami plus 7.5, and it goes to 7, well, I feel smart. But if I bet Indiana minus 7.5, and then it goes to 7, then I feel like a Dumbo, because that 7 is very important. So because it's gravitating perhaps close to a key number, and it's in between another key number, right? We've got a 3-point cushion between 7 and 10. I don't really care how far it goes down towards 7 as long as I get 7.5. So as long as we're above 7, I'm willing to wait this thing out. If it gets to 10, I want a piece of Miami hard. If it lands in between 7 and 10, like let's say it stays 8.5, I'm just going to take a small little nibble on Miami and hope for a close game. Because I do see a path where Miami can keep this game close. And that's kind of where we get into the analysis of the game. Both teams want to be physical. Both teams want to shorten the game. That right there lends to an underdog, lends to an under. That's why I like the first quarter under of this game. Do you remember last year in the national championship when Notre Dame had like a death march on their opening drive? Actually, let me see exactly how many. I was talking to my friend about this yesterday. I want to see, I forget last year how long Notre Dame's opening drive was. I remember it was because I remember I was on the first quarter under last year in the championship game. And I remember it was a death march. And the game ended up going over for 34-23. It was a relatively high-scoring game. But it was 7-0 in the first quarter. Why? Because Notre Dame went on a death march. An 18-play, 75-yard drive that lasted 10 minutes. That was Notre Dame's opening drive of the game. I think we're going to see that on the opening drive in this game. I think one of these teams is going to have a death march, 8, 9, 10 minutes long. They're going to stick one in the end zone, and then you're going to look up and you're going to be like, holy shit, the first quarter's almost over, and it's 7-0. That's kind of the vibe I get in this game. So under 10 in the first quarter. Make sure you get the 10. I laid 10 cents for it earlier in the week before every sharp on the planet gave it out. Now I'm seeing it BetMGM as I'm recording this Thursday night. Under 10 is minus 145. It's worth it. Lay the 45 cents. Why? God forbid. 7-0 with 4 minutes left in the quarter. One explosive play, dink and dunk, and then right before the quarter ends, they kick the field goal and you lose 10-0. The odds of 2 touchdown drives, unless we get a pick 6 on the first play like we did last week with Indiana, I don't think that's going to happen. The odds of 2 touchdown drives in the first quarter, back-to-back, boom, boom, with the style of offense that these teams play, probably not going to happen. Probably not going to happen. It's probably going to be touchdown field goal or touchdown nothing. That's my vibe. So under 10 in the first quarter is a best bet in this game. The other thing I like in this game, and this was strictly from the film. This was watching Indiana's film on defense. I think Carson Beck's over completions prop is something we should consider here. So I think this Indiana defense to me is maybe the best back 7 at rallying to the football and keeping the eyes on the quarterback. But it's a softer cover 4 style zone defense, right? Cover 4 meaning 4 defensive backs that are playing deep, right? They're going to trust their front 4 to get home. They've got a really good front 4, actually. But they are also a team that plays very soft. Now, at times they'll be aggressive, right? You saw that on the first play of the game. Was just good assignment football. It was a single high safety look on the first play of the game. Pons didn't really have any other threats on his side of the field, and he knew he had safety help behind him over the top, so he hunted downhill on that out route. He made a big play, made a pick 6. I don't think Dante Moore was fully in his head there, right? Dante Moore, they made up their mind before that play started. They were going with the football. I think Carson Beck has the ability to read a defense much better. So what Carson Beck does so well is he's got great mechanics and great anticipation. He knows exactly what you're doing, and he puts his team in the right spot. He's not as athletic as every other quarterback. He can't move around as much, but he's very good at identifying, diagnosing, and then delivering with good mechanics on time and on target. I think he is going to be active in this game. I think the short passing game is going to be a factor. We've seen Indiana a little bit vulnerable in the screen game. That's where Malachi Toney could be a factor. I could even see Mark Fletcher catching some screens. But I think the completions prop at 18.5 is worth a bet because I think the game script, especially if Miami's behind and they've got to throw to make up, I think the game script lends to a lot of short, quick passing for Miami. And that, to me, has been something that they've been very good at doing. So I think Carson Beck can be effective doing that. The other things that I saw Oregon do okay against Indiana's defense, right? It wasn't a lot of good for Oregon against Indiana's defense, but they ran some counter well. Miami doesn't do that. Well, it's going to be interesting to kind of see because if you play a lot of soft zone against Carson Beck, he's going to pick you apart. And I think he's going to have an 80% completion rate in this game. That's my guess. So we're going to go over 18.5 on Carson Beck's completions prop. On the other side of the ball, for Indiana's offense, I mean, they also want to shrink the game. They're very selective when they chase explosives. They earn it through efficiency on the early parts of possessions. They want to make this game a handful of moments, and then they want to win those handful of moments because they think they're sharper than you. They think they're more disciplined than you. They believe that they're going to outlast you. And if they just keep hammering the nail, eventually you will relent and you will make that mistake, and that's when their explosive game can become a factor. The one thing I love about this Indiana team, when I watch their RPO game, it's very futuristic. When I watch a lot of RPO games, it's very simple route combinations, right? It's like slant, hitch, or slant out. Indiana runs RPOs on like 25% of plays, but they're all switch releases. It's very unique. Usually, again, RPOs, it's like double slants. That's like the Tua Bama RPO. It's like fake, pull, double slants on the other side. Indiana runs these switch releases where you're kind of like, you're having to really defend the route tree and the route concept, and that is very hard to do, especially when you're dealing with a run-pass option. So I think that's where Indiana's ability to stretch the field can be very dangerous in the RPO game. And Mendoza's an assassin. Like, he is an assassin. Anytime you show him man coverage, he will throw the back shoulder fade. they will run a switch release. They are diabolical against man coverage. I don't think Miami's going to play a ton of man against them, but they'll play a little bit of man. And Fernando's just so good at identifying it and then attacking it, at the right angles. And that's where this Indiana team's just so tough. There is no defense for a 3-step drop, back shoulder fade against man coverage. There's no defense against it. If you can execute that, you're going to win at the college level. And Indiana's just become incredibly efficient at executing that. I love their offensive line. Coogan at center is a Sunday player. He's got sweet feet. And look out for number 37. He's kind of an H-back. He's like a tight end, 6'1", 250. His name's Riley Nowakowski. He is a huge piece in their blocking game. If you follow number 37 all night long, you will follow where the football is going in the run game. So they're just a very disciplined unit. They do have one weakness, though. What is the one weakness for Indiana? The right tackle position. So left tackle, they're very solid. Center, they're very good. On the interior, the offensive line, they're very good. The right tackle, Khalil Benson, below average pass blocking grade. Of the 10 sacks Indiana has allowed this year, 4 of them have been from him. Team high, 24 pressures, 19 hurries allowed. He does have upside at times. He's very good in the run blocking game. He's got heavy hands, but he is susceptible to the speed rush, which is exactly what Ruben Bain and Marquise Lightfoot specialize in. That, to me, is a problem. If Lightfoot or Bain or Mesidor can get off the edge, off that right tackle, Benson, and get to Mendoza, we saw Oregon create a couple of havoc plays in the backfield against Mendoza. That can flip this game. That's the one spot where I see Indiana a little bit subpar. Right tackle, Khalil Benson. The other notes I have for you in this game, Miami's defense is just like, I think that like they're going to battle you. Like Mesidor and Bain, we know they lead the nation in sacks. They're both first rounders. I think Bain's a top 5 pick. Miami 40% pressure rate in the last 2 playoff games. Indiana's blocking very strong up front. We told you the left tackle Carter Smith, he's second among all O-linemen in pass blocking grade. So they don't have a problem on the left side. It's the right tackle Khalil Benson that's got the problem. Indiana 73rd in knockdown rate, which is sacks plus hits. So again, Mendoza's kind of been knocked around a little bit, and that right side with Benson is the guy to look at. On the Miami offensive side, it's all about the yak. Their receivers, 3rd in yak this year, 5th in missed tackles force, 120th in ADOT. So they throw everything short right around the line of scrimmage. Again, this is why I like the Carson Beck completions prop. He's great. He knows that if he just gets the ball to his guys, they will miss tackles, yak. Short completions. I think that's the name of the game for Miami here, and that's why I like the Carson Beck completions prop. The Miami run game is very downhill. They run a lot of man and duo. What's duo? Double teams in the middle. You're trying to create displacement on the interior of the defensive line by double teaming both defensive tackles on the interior. Mark Fletcher, 426 rushing yards on duo plays this year. That's the most in the Power 4. He's really good at reading the linebackers, right? Once you eliminate those defensive tackles, you get right to the linebacker level, and Fletcher's great at making those guys miss, making one cut and getting upfield. But this Indiana run defense is fantastic. The most, perhaps, fundamentally sound run defense in college football. 2.5 yards per attempt on duo. That's the 7th fewest in the FBS. And less than a 2% explosive run rate on duo, 4th best in the FBS. They are fantastic at run fitting. Elijah Hardy, Aiden Fisher, Aiden Jones. They probably need to play their best games of the year. I love Aiden Fisher. He's got elite recognition. He's played a lot of ball. He's a Sunday mover. Hardy, his retraceability is fantastic, so he can route back and get back to the hole. Does a great job at preventing those explosives in the run game. He comes to balance really well. He's got tremendous feet, fundamentally sound. Their best pass rusher, Mikael Kamara, 6'1", 260. Great lateral quickness. Doesn't have a big strike zone to block, which is good. That's a good thing. He gets really skinny when he tries to get in between defensive tackles' hands. Very slippery. I think the right tackle, Francis, is going to be fine against Kamara. The left tackle, Markel Bell, right? He's bigger, big body. So that's where that speed rush off the edge, Kamara can get skinny and get around him, that bend, right? We call that bendability. That's where I think maybe the Indiana rush can get home off the left side of that line against Markel Bell. Daniel Ndukwe, Southern Georgia kid, edge rusher, number 17 for Indiana. Big juice off the edge. So again, Indiana's got 2 guys off the edge that can really bring the juice, and then Tyreek Tucker in the middle, great get off. I don't like the center for Miami as much, Brockemeyer. I think of the offensive lineman for Miami. I think their right side guard tackle is elite. Left side, I think Bell's big body, but he can be beat on the speed rush. But for the most part, he's pretty solid. Brockemeyer's the one guy that's, been up and down, fighting some injury stuff too. So I think that would be the one spot for Miami's offensive line. Tyreek Tucker, if he can control that interior and not allow the double teams to take place, right? Fight through those double teams on the duo plays. That's where Tyreek Tucker can make his impact on this game. I think styles make fights, right? It's very hard to run at Indiana. You can run around them a little bit. Oregon ran around them a little bit. Very hard to run at Indiana. Well, Miami wants to run at you. They want to run right through your screws, down your throat, and out your ass. It'll be interesting to see how they handle that. And again, that's why I think the Carson Beck completions prop, I'll say it again, is my favorite prop in this game. I think the short passing game is the equalizer, and I think Beck operates that well, and I just don't think Miami's going to have a ton of space in the run game. So I think they're going to have to rely on Beck and his arm if they want to move this thing consistently. Official pick for the game, I think Miami keeps this close. I was on the dog Notre Dame last year. I kind of felt like I deserved to cover there. And I said if I'm going to get another opportunity with that situation this year where you have this elite powerhouse team against the upstart, I think the upstart getting to the championship is worth something in this format. So Miami winning these games the way that they did not play their best game against Ole Miss. They dropped multiple interceptions, probably should have won by multiple scores, still covered. I think they're live here. Do they win the game? No. I think Indiana's the best team in the sport. They deserve to be the champion. They've been the best team all year. But Miami is a live dog. They are tough in the trenches. They've got a quarterback who understands how to put the ball in the right place, and they've got a run game that can go right through you. So do not count this Miami team out. Just because Indiana looked dominant against Oregon last week, I think you are paying that premium. This line was 6 last week on the look-ahead. It would have been 7.5 if they played Ole Miss. They're not. They're playing Miami. So I would not pay the tax on Indiana. If you want to bet the side on this game, you either bet Miami or you move on. I will put a small shekel on Miami +9, right? We've got Indiana +130, so it's a nice little middle opportunity for us. But don't rush. I'm not betting this thing now. I'm waiting until we get Monday night right before kick. I want to see if the public money is going to push this thing to 10. It probably won't, but I'm not in a rush. Patience is a virtue. The bets that I do have in my pocket for this game, under 10 first quarter and Carson Beck over 18.5 completions. Those are the two bets I have in pocket. I will also give out Miami. I'll call it 9. That's the best price I see available here in town at South Point. I'm going to tweet out Miami +9 on Monday right before kick. Maybe it's 10. Who knows? Probably not. But that'd be cool if it was. All right, that's it for this jam-packed edition. Again, I don't usually do the bets on the show. It's not a betting show. However, we make an exception for Football Fridays. Maybe that'll be the compromise. I know a lot of people want my wagers. They want my gambling advice. I get it. I love you all. I appreciate the support. Maybe the Football Friday shows will start to turn into just heavy gambling shows. And then we'll just save all the other stuff for the Sunday night shows. But I'm going to drop a newsletter overnight. Don't forget to subscribe. If you haven't subscribed yet, please, people, what the hell are you waiting for? I need your support. I need you to subscribe to the YouTube channel. I need you to subscribe to the newsletter. I need you to click the buttons. It makes my product more valuable so I can pitch to sponsors, so I can make money, so I can then do more work and get more quality and continue this thing to grow and keep pushing this ball forward. So I appreciate your support. Please subscribe, push all the buttons, follow all the socials, and we'll see you next time on The Morning After.